Hello and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy and governance. I am Shafiur Suleiman, standing in for Hamza Idris. On Monday, the Federal Executive Council, FEC, has put forward a proposal of 26.01 trillion for the 2024 fiscal year to be presented to the National Assembly. The government has emphasized its commitment to maintaining the January to December budget cycle with the aim of passing and signing the 2024 budget before December 31st, 2023. At the conclusion of the FEC meeting chaired by President Bola Tinubu at the Presidential Villa in Abuja, the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Atiku Bagudu, discussed this. As addressing reporters at the end of the FEC meeting, Atiku Bagudu, along with his colleagues, stated that the Council had also approved the 2024-2026 Medium-Term Expenditure Framework, MTEP, and Fiscal Strategy Papers, FSP. He further clarified that the Executive is mandated by the Fiscal Responsibility Act to present a document to the National Assembly prior to budget submission, which outlines the medium-term economic outlook for the economy. Now, Trust TV's State House correspondent Kaide Modu sent in this report.
The Tinubu administration has made the kind of macroeconomic moves that restores balance in the economy and government finances. The tough decisions have elicited support from multilateral development banks, which is why the World Bank is willing to consider $1.5 billion of concessionary finances that will be dispersed relatively quickly.
The world today is one of high interest rates as the developed world looks to fight inflation. They're doing it by restricting money, keeping interest rates high so that they can get inflation down. What that means is that interest rates for everybody else become not just high, but very painful, if not unaffordable.
The cabinet also approved an $80 million facility from the African Development Bank to finance a project in Ekiti called Project EKZ, basically to support young people and towards advancement of technology in the country.
Nigeria has been able to make the kind of macroeconomic moves, has been able to take the tough decisions to restore balance in the economy, in the government's finances, that has warranted support, that has gendered and that has elicited even support from the multilateral development banks.
The executive is in talks with the legislature over the medium-term expenditure framework 2024 to 2026. Minister of Budget and National Planning Atiku Bagudu explains that the projected size of the 2024 budget is 26.01 trillion naira.
Oil production of 1.78 million barrels a day, exchange rate of 700, then the inflation of 21% and GDP growth rate of 3.76%. Also,
Ministers of Labor and Employment and Industry, Trade and Investment say they presented memos on various interventions, including the approval for implementation of federal government's agreement with organized labor.
The initial yes was agreed that within 30 days, we agreed for 30 days. And so within 30 days, there must be evidence of implementation.
Meanwhile, despite taking a fresh loan, which is also huge, the finance minister has given assurances that President Tinubu will not breach statutory limits in obtaining budget support facilities from the Central Bank of Nigeria through the Ways and Means Advance. From State House, Abuja, Kehinde Amudu, Trust TV News.
Now, joining us in the studio this evening to share perspectives on the issues, I have a policy analyst and strategist, Murtala Adogi Muhammad, with me in the studio. He's also the Executive Director of Systems Policy and Strategy Lab. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure being here. And I'm glad to be here with you this evening.
Right, okay. We'll now take a short break, and when we return, the conversation commences. Stay with us. Thank you very much for staying with us on Daily Politics. And now we're back for the discussion proper. Murtala Adogi, you've listened to that report from our correspondent at the Presidential Villa, now talking about the 2024 appropriation proposal. Now we're talking about a budget of 26 trillion naira. Looking at the 2023 budget and now the one that is being proposed, we have a difference of, if you like, an increase in terms of the figures now, over 5 trillion naira. What do you make up with this increase, and what necessitated it?
Thank you so much once again for giving me the opportunity to be here. To me, what we're supposed to do basically, it's even before making a projection of what we want to spend in 2024, we should be able to tell Nigeria what is the budget, what is the budget performance of 2023.
Yeah, we need to do a review, right?
Yes, we need to review the 2023 budget to come up with the budget performance. Because in the 2023 January, the president approved about 21 trillion naira, 21.8 trillion naira,
that's right.
as 2023 budget. Where are we now? And also, what is the performance, and how do we even finance the 2023 budget? I love to see a situation whereby the Minister of Budget and Planning give us a review, a report of the 2023 budget. How did we finance it? What is the performance? You know why we need to know the performance? The performance will tell us whether we should have a realistic budget or we should have a political budget.
You tell us the difference between a realistic budget, but then let's look at let's look at the items that made up the 2023 budget, for instance, and the projections then. For instance, there was a projection of, it was pegged at 6 trillion naira debt service, which is about at 1% of the budget. Then it was estimated to have a 10.49 trillion naira revenue. That is the estimated revenue projection. There was also an it was put at oil benchmark of $70 a barrel. The daily projection of production was put at 1.69 million barrel. Then the GDP projected was at 3.7%. Inflation was at 16%, while budget deficit was projected at around 11.34 trillion naira. And it was to be financed through borrowings, domestic borrowing at 7.4 trillion, foreign at 1.76 trillion. So let's take them one after the other, for instance.
Okay.
We're talking about the size. You're talking about performance. So far, there hasn't been clear-cut performance in terms of what the budget is in terms of implementation. But what we do know is that the trajectory of budget deficit is still with us.
Yes.
So how do we reconcile this?
No, I want to just take two aspects of these indices that you mentioned. Let's look at the inflation.
Right.
Yes, in the budget they look at inflation at 16%.
Yeah.
Today's inflation is what? 26.
It's 27, almost 27%.
Yes. So it means if you budget what that you want to spend, maybe,
even though we're talking about inflation specifically within this program.
Yes,
but then, by way of mentioning.
Yes. So if you look at it, the January projection is that inflation will be at 16. Now inflation is 26. And if you look at
10%
increase
higher than.
Yes, and if you look at the amount of money that we want to service debt, maybe it was around 5 billion.
Right.
Or maybe 5 trillion.
6 trillion.
6 trillion. Okay, now we want to service debt with 8 trillion.
Yeah, that means there's also an increase.
Increase.
In terms of, yeah.
So,
even though that we may say it's explanatory, the fact that this administration continue in that trajectory of borrowing.
So you see, we need to even ask the question about the borrowing. Borrowing for what? What are we borrowing for?
For consumption or for production?
That is it. So if you are borrowing for production, then we could have said, okay, as a result of the borrowing, this is what we are getting from our borrowing. But we are borrowing for consumption. We are borrowing for construction of road and wherever. How do you intend to gain the return through this road? Are we having like maybe a system where we tax people to pay money by using the road? So we need to question the act of the borrowing. Let's cut our coat according to the size of the clothes,
It is
not
not
the
about
size
the
of
figures,
our
for
body.
instance.
Yes, that's what I said, political budget or maybe realistic budget. So if you want to go with realistic budget, our budget will not be this up to maybe 26 trillion. We might be talking about maybe 10 trillion, 15 trillion. That is a realistic budget.
But why do we have, let me borrow from you. Why do we have political budget?
Yes,
why must we project numbers such that people will say, hey, it's huge amount?
Yes, I think one is to score a political goal that we have a big money to spend, and maybe to build confidence around the investors that we have a bigger budget that we want to spend. But to me, realistic, the more we are realistic with, it's like a family size. In the family size, there are some things that within the household is more of like a luxury, and you're trying to avoid it and being realistic. So we want a system whereby we'll be realistic with our budget, and we know how much we are generating from IGR. We know how much we're going to get from the sale of crude oil. We know how much you're going to get from the donor partners, from international NGOs, from wherever, and come up with a realistic budget that this is what we are going to spend in 2024. But as of now, in fact, we can be able to discuss it better if we know the budget performance. Let me give you a good example. Track all the MDS and ministries. If we take like 5 ministries now, you ask them what is their budget performance, you realize that maybe it's around 30%, 20%. Why? Because in the budget, they gave the ministry 10 billion naira. But the release was 3 billion.
That's right.
So if you get Minister of Health 10 billion naira, and at the end of the whole year, by December, the amount of money released for implementation was 3 billion naira, then it means it's like 30%.
Yeah, you have almost 70% deficit.
Yes.
Okay, let's look at those projections. I mean, the projections and the reality, very closely. Take, for instance, revenue, projected revenue. We're talking about 10.49 trillion naira. Trillion naira. But we are aware that from January to June, take for instance, just one agency of government was said to have generated 5.5 trillion naira. That is the FIRS alone. Even though states substantially underperform. Yes. Out of 36 states, only 23 out of 36 states perform below expectations in terms of IGR. Put together, the 36 states were projected to generate 2.64 trillion naira. Yes. So you can imagine. Yeah. Now, but the money for state will remain in state. That is the beauty of the federalism we operate. Yes, so the IGR generated by state is for state. If Kano generated 4 billion, is for Kano. Jigawa generated 5 billion, is for Jigawa. Yeah, but then we also need to know the performance of the subnational. Yes, we can know the performance of subnational if you analyze the budget of subnational at subnational level. But what we have now is that let's go back to we project to have a revenue of 10.4 trillion. And FIRS alone generate 5, which is like 50%. 5.5 trillion. Yes, by the time you go to custom and others, we might be able to meet up the 10 trillion. But you see, in a budget, there are some things I call like about the 5 indices of like review and analyzing budget. Yes, right. The one is volume. The volume of the budget. The size. Like the size of the budget. Yes. Then the second one is the equity of the budget. Where does the money go? The poor, the rural community, the vulnerable, the rich,
road construction, fiscal development, flyover where we don't even need flyover, building 10-story building where we need only 1-story building. You know, so where is the money going? Then the second one is the efficiency of the spending. How efficient are we spending our money? Then the fourth one is the effectiveness of the spending. How effective are we spending our money? And the last one is the accountability, transparency. You know, how open is the spending process? That's right. How many ministries will be willing to open their document for you now? So until and unless we put a budget on the scale of these 5 indices, then automatically we are not analyzing budget. And that is why you realize that we have all the billions are coming, but the equity of spending, it's where we have issue in Nigeria.
Yeah, equity of spending and of course transparency.
Yes.
Now we're talking about, we're just citing an example, using FIRS, you know, as an example. This is one out of several other revenue generating agencies of the government. Was able to generate 5.5 trillion naira within 6 months.
Yes.
If that is correct. What this shows is that it is not about the revenue generation.
Yes.
Certainly the projection is even lower,
yeah,
if that is the case.
Absolutely.
So, but then where is this money going into? Because with all of this, we still find government borrowing to finance even things that are not, I mean, for even things that ordinarily the government should be able to afford.
Now you see, to be realistic with you, we need to ask questions. We need to ask questions, and not just ordinary questions, but a kind of evidence-based question that we should be able to have an answer. Yeah. You know, every month from July this year, we kind of realized 400 billion naira from the subsidy removal.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. 400 billion naira. And July, August, September to December, we may have like 5 or 6 months. So if you do 400 billion times 6, we give you a big money.
You have on about 2.4 trillion thereabout.
Then with this, we are now going to borrow about 1.5 billion USD from World Bank to finance the budget. This is what the minister said.
So what happened to what we saved, for instance?
That is it.
Yes.
So we are saving money from the subsidy, and we are going to World Bank again to borrow 1.5 billion US dollar, you know, to finance the budget. So there is this question of equity, effectiveness, and efficiency, the 3E I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. So what do you think? Is it the absence of monitoring and evaluation? And who does what? Because the MPS, for instance, keep sitting at the CBN telling Nigerians, I mean, dishing out the figures and what have you. But then, in terms of review, in terms of monitoring and evaluation, who comes to tell Nigerians in terms of performance and what have you?
I am so happy with this question. I'm very happy with this question because we find ourselves in a situation whereby we have government, ministry, department, and agencies that are not delivering result and reform as is expected of them to deliver on. We have Ministry of Budget and National Planning. And this Ministry of Budget and National Planning have the mandate to develop the short-term plan and the long-term plan. And also the MTEP, medium-term expenditure framework. And now if you look at, we have a 2021-2025 National Development Plan. We have Nigerian Agenda 2050. And we have our annual budget to finance this plan. So I expect the Ministry of Planning and Budget every quarter to communicate the result and impact to Nigerians by clearly telling Nigerians that this is the result we're achieving based on the money we allocated to 1, 2, 3 MDS.
That is, if there is the result.
Yeah, yes.
Because so essentially, if there is no result to show, what do you do?
No. You see, we have this proverb that said, if you cannot show me result, show me sweat. If you cannot show me result, show
Tell
me
us why we are doing badly.
Let me see you having sweat that yes, you are working. So we need to see that, in fact, the number one message to the Minister of National Planning and Budget is that he should be having a quarterly budget performance review policy dialogue. If there is something we should take out of this place,
that's right.
This should be one of the punchy messages I'm sending to the Minister of Budget and National Planning. Every quarter, bring key stakeholders and present to them budget performance and have a policy dialogue on it. That from January to March, we release...
And what need to be done.
Yes. From January to March, we release 7 trillion to all the MDS. Health, education, agriculture, poverty alleviation, labor and productivity, water and sanitation, nutrition, climate change. This is what we're able to achieve with the 7 trillion. Moving forward, from April to June, we are going to release 20 trillion to MDS. And this is the result we're expected to deliver on. So based on those results, you monitor and track a major performance. You will not see where we are with the challenge. But we relax, keep releasing money to MDS, keep sending them money, keep releasing money until November, December, we are doing another budget again.
Yeah, but I think that is changing, to be fair to the current administration. If I'm getting it right, I understand there is a particular appointment that was made recently that has to do with, is it an agency or a unit under the government, you know, headed by the former chief executive of the MPA, you know, now monitoring, if you like, or yes, I'm not too sure about about the message, but if that is correct,
what is the name?
That the government is coming up with a measure now to track, if you like, or to monitor the performances of the
under which of the MDS?
I can't say the MDA precisely, but then I think it's being headed by the former MPA chief executive, Hadiza Bala Usman. Yes. So I don't know, perhaps that may replace, or that may bridge that gap you're talking about.
Yeah,
in terms
to some
of monitoring.
extent. Yeah, to some extent. But you see, Hadiza Bala Usman is a special advisor
policy coordination.
Yeah,
right.
Policy coordination.
Yeah.
So there's not budget implementation. It's a policy coordination, and to avoid overlap and to avoid having a disjointed and uncoordinated effort around the implementation of the policy, that is where she's coming in. But that role, I'm telling you now, it's in the Ministry of Budget and National Planning. And they need to have a unit.
Is it to say that there's no this unit over the years?
They might have the unit. They might have the unit to some extent, but maybe it's very weak. And according to Michael Barber, the chief of staff to Tony Blair, he wrote this book about the art of running a state. And he emphasized the need for governance delivery unit. So we need to have a strong and a robust governance delivery unit in the Office of National Planning and Budget. And the governance delivery unit now will track the implementation of all the policies around the MDAs and have a single dashboard where it showcases results and how they've been delivering.
But one thing is about the political will, perhaps, to also take the necessary steps, you know, to implement that. Because even the former administration, the previous administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, at some point came up with what he called some KPIs, you know, for the ministry.
Yeah, 9 key result areas.
That's right.
Yeah, so there are 9 in number.
How has that been implemented? Is another thing.
No, you see, it's like if you have a family and you are not putting in the very strong rules of engagement in your household, you come back from work, you don't meet anybody in the house. Simply because your wife and the children know that there's no punishment that will going to happen. Nothing will happen. So if you are a leader, human beings need to be monitored. So if you're a leader, you need to have a system of check and balances of the people that are helping you or supporting you delivering results.
Right.
So the previous administration had a key 9 result areas. And even just 2 days ago, I checked the key. I was just...
The deliverables.
Yes, I was just laughing and said, okay, we have a new administration now. What are the key 9 result delivery area, or 8 or 7 or whatever? But the most important thing is that we must have a deliverables, we must have a target, we must have a milestone, we must have a where we want to be. Then develop how. Now, the question I asked myself when I had what happened at the council yesterday, now they want to reduce the inflation rate from 26 to 21%. The question is how?
Yes.
You see, now, and also if you look at the whole thing, the budget projection, we are going to service our debt. We might know the how, but the inflation rate now with the increase in cost of everything,
that's 26,
the price,
26 trillion naira.
Yeah, 26 trillion. 26 trillion naira as a budget. But the inflation rate is 26%.
Yeah,
26% now. In 2021, in 2023, it was 16. Now we want to reduce the inflation rate from 26 to 21 in 2024.
17.16.
Yeah, we want to. If I'm the president of Nigeria and I have a minister of national planning and budget, and he come up with this proposal, I will ask him, how do you intend to reduce inflation from 26 to 21?
Yeah, because that is the projection.
Yes.
How is it going to happen between now and then?
In leadership, in the Nigerian context, in the leadership process, we don't ask the question how. When previous administration said they are going to give us 3 million jobs in Nigeria every year, we did not ask how.
But then
So moving forward, every projection, every analysis, every proposal, the next question should be how. We need to be convinced on the how you are going to do it.
Yes. Okay. No, we're going to discuss, you know, the inflation in detail. But then the MPS is also telling us that there is improvement in terms of how the current administration is managing its expenditures.
Okay.
There is also improvement in terms of oil and non-oil
income.
Revenue
generation.
Yeah. Could that be a reason why they? I mean, yardstick for the projection now?
No. You see, if it said there is improvement, what are you using as a benchmark? What is the benchmark? So tell us the improvement from where to where, from when to when. If there's an improvement from 2023 to 2024, tell us what are the improvement. What benchmark did you use? What baseline did you use?
Right.
So you must have a baseline. You see, that is why as a leader, when you come on board, the first thing to do is to develop the baseline. The baseline will help you to say, okay, when I come on board as a president in May 2023, I made so at 20%. Now our expenditure has reduced to 14%. It means you reduce the expense by 6%.
That's right. It's a clear-cut figure that you can present.
So at times, our political leaders have found way of giving us a very nice conversation that we want to hear, by telling us that there's improvement. How? Where?
Right. Okay, in case you're just joining us, the program is Daily Politics, and we've been interfacing with Murtala Adogi Mohammed. He is the founder and executive director of System Strategy and Policy Lab. Together we'll be looking at the 2024 appropriation proposal of 26.1 trillion Naira. And we'll also be looking at other key issues around this policy statement. We'll take a break. When we return, the conversation continues. Stay with us. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Daily Politics on Trust TV. Do well to follow us across all our social platforms and watch us live on YouTube. Now, the conversation continues. I still have in the studio Murtala Adogi Mohammed, a system strategy policy lab operator who is giving us his perspective on the 2024 appropriation and issues around it. We'll now be looking at the issue of inflation, which is very, very significant, you know, to this conversation. Now, Nigeria's annual inflation rose in September to its highest level in about 2 decades. That is at 26.72%. This is amid an increasing cost of living crisis in Africa's largest economy. The National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, said on Monday that the September inflation rate rose for a 9th straight month from August 25.8%, with millions of Nigerians now impoverished due to the impact of government reforms. Food inflation, making up the bulk of Nigeria's inflation basket, rose to 30.64% in September from 29.84% in August. Now, President Bola Tinubu has been under pressure to ease economic hardship after scrapping subsidy on fuel, which tripled prices. There is also the issue of falling Naira, which has depreciated more than 50%, now causing a surge in prices of commodities in markets across the country. Now, this, you know, from the basis of our conversation, you know, in the second half of this program, inflation has been a very serious crisis, you know, even though not isolated to Nigeria, but Nigeria's inflation is becoming worrisome. Now, we're dealing with hyperinflation of around 30%. What led us into this?
Two factors, two very strong factors. The exchange rate, that now we have $1 to about 1,014 naira or 104,000 naira per dollar. We are not exporting much. We do more of importation. And it is when you are exporting, then you can be able to at least stabilize your own exchange rate. But our exchange rate is not been stable simply because we solely depend on almost everything they are bringing down to Nigeria. And we have to pay in dollars or buy in dollars over there. Then two, the subsidy removal without a strong mitigant, because if by the time we remove the subsidy, I mean we have a kind of a well-designed thoughts process that produce policies and actions and projects that will come up with a strong mitigation for price increase, then maybe we could have managed it well. But now we will remove subsidy and also we do more of importation. So these
factors
significantly contribute to the inflation. Right. And you can see the effect almost everywhere.
Yeah. Let's do a review here too, talking about the inflation rate. You know, in the last budget, I mean the budget currently under implementation, the projection was that the exchange rate will remain at 345.57 naira to a dollar. That was the projection. But the current reality is that the exchange rate, that is the official exchange rate, is put at 765.707 naira to a dollar. That is at the official window. We're talking about the parallel market or the black market. We're talking about more than 1,000 naira. Now, but in the projection given to us by the current administration, that is ahead of next year's budget, the figures has reduced significantly. Again, we need to ask this question: how will they be able to reduce it?
Yes, that you see, that is the question I'm also asking. You know, there's what you call communicating result. Most of the top government officials we have today, from the ministers to the governors to the top policymakers, they are very good in communicating activities. But I'm very sorry to say they are very weak in communicating results. Yeah, there's a difference between communicating activity and communicating results. So if you are communicating result, you go further to tell us how you intend to do it. Because now $1 is 1,014, 104,000 to $1. And you now said the projection is that by next year you are going to bring it to 700 naira.
Yeah, at the parallel market.
Yes, you are going to bring it to 700 naira. How are you going to do it? So that is the question we need to ask. I have no idea of how we are going to do it. How we are going to bring the dollar from 1,000 to 700 naira. I have no idea. Of how to do it. So they made the projection. They should be the one in the report that they presented yesterday. Even after the presentation at the council, I expected the minister to have a brief with the media and tell them that this is how we intend to do it.
This is perhaps akin to what we are seeing today. When the government came up with this very strong policy, if you like, reform. Now, reforms and policies that are very, very harsh, some will say. Removing subsidy, you know, at a go. And then without corresponding ideas of how to manage the aftershocks. Is it what we're going to likely going to see in terms of the budget implementation?
Yeah, to some extent, because to be realistic, I commend His Excellency the President for taking the bold step, but that could have happened in a kind of incremental.
It shouldn't have been, you know,
disruptive
at once.
Yeah, it's kind of disruptive instead of incremental. There is where we need disruptive approach to reform, and that's where we need incremental approach to reform. On subsidy removal is more disruptive than incremental. It could have been gradually and incremental, then we see the impact, you know, but it's now disruptive and it's affected the entire market.
That's right.
So in the budget implementation for next year, if a proper measures is not being put in place to track performance and ensure value for money and ensure that we are getting result for the money that we are releasing to the MDS, then we may likely witness almost the same thing. Right. Because, and to be realistic with you, my hope and prayer here is the insecurity thing should really minimize, should really be reduced to a minimal level, than an average farmer in Jibia, in Tafe, in Kachia, in Kaduna, in Telata Mafara, in Zamfara, will be able to go to farm. Because if security threats escalate to a certain level with this inflation rate, then it's going to be a disaster.
Looking at even the current situation now, food inflation constitutes the bulk of this inflation, 30.64 percent. Looking at the current standing, and could that be the reason why the government is contemplating, or rather it has already said that it is delisting some 43 items on the forex ban list, and some say that perhaps is a window to allow for food importation into the country. Would that solve the problem?
At that much, if, like in a layman language, if opening the border and allow importation of whatever will reduce inflation, at that much. Because the issue is around purchasing power. It's around purchasing power and income inequality. We have income inequality, we have poor income inequality, and we have weak purchasing power.
That's a double tragedy.
Yes. So
how do we deal with that? Let's start with the purchasing power.
The purchasing power here is that if you look at an average civil servant that is working in Abuja, staying in Mararaba, start with level 8, his salary is maybe 80,000 naira or maybe 90,000 naira. And he spent like 50% of the salary of 80,000 naira on transportation to Mararaba. He left with what? 40,000 naira. It's not up to a bag of a cement. It's not up to a bag of a rice. So the purchasing power of an average civil servant is weak. He's even working.
So what are the conditions? What are the necessities? What do we need to do to improve the purchasing power?
Absolutely, to kind of stabilize the income inequality to some level. Now, somebody working in FIRS, somebody working in CBN, somebody working in NISAL, somebody working in NNPC, why is he collecting salary more than somebody working in the Ministry of Education? Why? Buying food in the same market? All of us are Nigerians? What is the justification? What reasons? So we
put in about the same hours of
the work is the same hour at the same time. We all stay in Mararaba, we all stay in Karu, we all stay in Lokogoma, and we all work in Abuja. And all is the federal government. What is the justification that CBN, NNPC, and wherever, even though they are managing our money, but there are no justification enough for them to collect money more than somebody Minister of Culture and Tourism, somebody Minister of Transportation.
So income inequality.
Yes. So that would definitely continue to affect the inflation, and that would definitely continue to increase the number of people that are falling into poverty cycle.
Already we're talking about over 40 million, that were added to the poverty bracket in the last couple of months. And
whether we like it or not, we need to do enough to lift Nigerians out of poverty. We were the second poverty capital after India. So one of the ways we can do enough is to ensure that we stabilize this income, find a way of increasing the salary for the civil servant, but not just increasing, also review until they reduce the redundancy, because a lot of them are not even doing the work. But they are not even coming. But that is a reform for the head of civil service and the SGF and wherever there. But the bottom line is that the income inequality and poor purchasing power are significantly contributed to where we are in Nigeria.
Already if we're to look at what the government is doing, perhaps it's also thinking along this line, this issue of conditional cash transfer, if you like, part of the empowerment initiative. The government is launching what they call a conditional cash transfer that has risen to 25,000 naira or thereabout per household, if I'm not mistaken.
For how many months?
That's for an initial 6 months or so. I can't remember.
I think it's 3 months.
3 months, right? Okay. So what can that do in terms of reducing or addressing this income shortfall that you're talking about?
You see, the fear is that you are giving, and I ask this question, we should not start what we cannot finish. And we have to be very careful with most of this fire brigade approach to reform. In a situation whereby you give somebody 25,000 every month for 3 months and you stop. What happened? You expose him to become vulnerable. Don't be surprised some people will increase the number of their wives within those 3 months.
Instead.
Yes, because they have increase in income of 25,000 times 3.
But they're looking at the vulnerable, I mean the poor family.
Yes, the poor family, yes, of course. So my thinking here is that we should look beyond the first 3 months. If there is something we will do for the first 3 months, fine. But we should look after 3 months worthless. We are saying maybe by then we'll come up with a final review report of the salary increment for civil servant. But the poor vulnerable, that you have given them cash transfer, 25,000 times 3 for 6 months, what happened after 3 months? That is the communication gap that I've been saying. They should come out and tell Nigerians that, okay, what will happen after these 3 months? When I finish collecting 25,000, am I transiting into a job? Am I transiting into a learning skills? So my recommendation here is that anybody you are giving 25,000 naira at a poor, as what we call the bottom millions in Nigeria, they should be able to have a transition plan. Don't just expose somebody to 25,000 for 3 months and you stop without having a transition plan. There must be a transition plan where the person is learning something, or you partner him with something, or you connect him with something that at least less than that 25,000 will be coming every month after initial 25,000.
Yeah, the issue of sustainability.
Yes.
But then another concern is that do you even need in the first place to give handouts, you know, if you like? Because fundamentally, some will tell you that what the country needs is to return to parts of production now. There's need for an enabling environment for people to maximize their potentials, to realize their potentials, economic, you know, empowerment and what have you. There's need for the macro and small medium enterprises to thrive, you know, so that people can get engaged. What are we doing in terms of, you know, spiraling development in this sector?
Yeah, I think for now, the enabling environment, even when it's been provided, we look at the market, we look at the support coming from the government, we look at the viability of collecting loan to start a business, and also we look at a situation whereby the security is playing also its own factor. So, and also the exchange rate. All these are enabling environment that government might try to put in place. But this is for people that want to start a business. This is for people that want to go into partnership. This is for people that want to go into private sector. But the poor of the poorest, the vulnerable that we have in every community. When I was part of the team that designed conditional cash transfer in 2010 in Kano. Okay. When I was working with DFID, now it's called the FCDO. It's the British government ministry that handled the international affairs. That is Department for International Development, DFID. We designed the cash transfer in Kano under the World Bank project. And the process we use in designing that cash transfer is we use a simple Excel sheet. And we identify the poor household, and we then ask them a question: how much do you earn monthly? So you say 20,000, we'll write it. The head of the house, Musa Mohammed, how much do you earn? 15,000. Usman Umar, how much do you earn? 30,000. We'll write it. We ask Excel a simple instruction: give us an household with less than 5,000 in a month.
I want to come up with a figure.
Yes. You give us the number of household that, let's say, in Kura local government, this is the household that earn less than 5,000 naira in a month. The whole income of the household, the father, the mother, and the children, their monthly income is less than 5,000. It means that family is non-qualified to collect cash transfer.
Okay, but there is a review of all of this. I understand the current
no, I'm giving you an example. So those kind of family, they really need a cash transfer. And that's why we call it conditional. That condition, in the context of what we are doing now, some of them, we don't even define the condition. But then we define the condition.
Okay, what were the conditions?
If we are giving you this money, you allow your son or you allow your daughter to go to school, and she must get 80% attendance. So for you to get the next money, you must allow your daughter to go to school.
We're talking
So
about
every
5,000 Naira.
Yes.
I hear you're talking about allowing his daughter to go to school.
2010, 12 years
because
ago.
even transportation alone to school.
12 years ago, 12 years ago, 5,000 is a big money. 12 years ago,
that's right.
2010. But you see, that is why they now review to 25. When we are giving 5,000 in 2010, now they say the cash transfer should be 25.
That's right.
So,
okay.
But to be realistic, we need to do a lot in terms of redesigning the project and identifying the right benefit and make it accountable in such a way that you will be on your you will be in your room. You can just Google and see the beneficiary.
There should be transparency.
Transparency. Have a big dashboard where every Nigerian can Google and see the beneficiaries.
That's right. Okay, talking about inflation now, we've identified, put inflation as a significant factor in the whole inflation basket, and you talked about some of the challenges now. Insecurity is a fundamental challenge.
Absolutely.
And again, beyond insecurity, there is also a need for government intervention in terms of providing the farmers, if you like, with the necessary tools, mechanization, inputs in terms of pesticides and the rest of it. How much do you think the government can do? Because if we have to curb this inflation, it means we have to get people to produce, at least grow what they will eat.
Yes, I strongly agree with that. There's a need to increase our production in terms of agriculture. And we have NAIC, Nigeria Agricultural Insurance Corporation. We have Nigerian Bank of Industries. We have a lot of agencies.
Yes, Bank of Agriculture.
Nigerian Bank of Agriculture. But when last did you hear about them? So, they are there with a structure, with a staff, but the question, are they delivering results?
Some say that channel, some of these facilities to people that don't need it. For instance, people access them when they don't even need them. So they are not channeled towards the right direction. Farmers...
And even with the coming of COVID, we now come up with NISAL. That is under CBN. Yeah. It's a bank, it's like more microfinance bank that support agriculture, production in Nigeria, productivity by giving the farmer loans. Even though Nigerians are very stubborn when it comes to loan payment.
Yeah, there has been a running battle, between the government and the people to recover the loans that have been obtained.
But make it open in such a way that people can have access to this loan, and you can also provide an incentive package for them, and there should be proper training and monitoring and see how they are doing. Don't just give somebody loan and forget about him. So to me, we need to do more into that, and Nigeria need to go into massive production itself through the Ministry of Agriculture. We can learn a lesson from Thailand. How are they doing it in terms of their rice production? We can learn a lesson on rice production from Brazil. We can learn a lesson from China. How they're able to lift their people out of poverty.
But we had the Anchor Borrower initiative, which substantially, some would say, even with the flip-flops, had spore production. There has been significant increase in terms of production.
Yes, yes, I can see that happen, most especially on rice production. That's why, to some extent, I'm not too comfortable with this opening of a border. That's my personal opinion as a Nigerian. Why? Because we have a lot of Nigerians that have a massive investment into rice production. The massive investment in rice production, and if you look at more than 80% of the rice in the market, it's from our local production company. So, but now by the time you open the border, they begin to bring in the foreigners. What happened to the local one?
So in other words, we're looking for an easy way out of the crisis instead of a sustainable...
Yes, we should have a sustainable way of increasing rice production. Have more Nigerians going to the private sector, partnership in rice production.
Already we have the growers, coming on board.
We have the land.
A number of processing companies are there, have grown, for a significant number. We're talking about more than 400 outgrowers, if you like, of this produce.
Yes, now if you look at it's just like the issues around the price, and I gave the reason for the price. Why things is very expensive for you is because you don't have the money. We say rice is 50,000 is because the poor and the civil servant don't have the money. But if your purchasing power is strong, the income inequality is also strong to some extent. Yes, that we will not complain about this. But we don't have the money.
No purchasing power.
Yes, and also the income inequality is very weak, and when you look at it, the poor people most complain, the pensioners, the young people, and we have a young population.
All right.
And going by the projection, Nigeria will be around 400 million people by 2050.
That's a huge number.
Yes.
And planning for
because
this...
our production rate is like we give back to 6 million children every year, 6 to 7 million every year. Population growth about 3.2.
The huge task.
Yes.
Thank you very much for this perspective, Murtala Adogi Mohammed. Is a strategist, a policy affairs analyst, and of course is the founder of the System Strategy and Policy Lab here in Abuja. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much for bringing me here. But I have 3 recommendations.
Very quickly, because...
Very quickly, 3 recommendations to the Minister of National Planning and Budget.
Okay.
1, there is need to be organizing quarterly budget performance policy dialogue every quarter.
Yeah, you mentioned
2,
that.
it should set up a robust governance delivery unit in his office to monitor and track how MDs are delivering. And the last one, there should be a ministerial peer review mechanism. Every quarter, publish how the ministries are doing. Rank the ministries into 3: green, red, and amber ministries. We can discuss this color later on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, hope to bring you back to discuss more on that. And viewers, this is a wrap on today's package. We sincerely hope you found the conversation engaging and informative. And be sure to join us daily on Daily Politics Live, airing every weekday, and also on our special package on Friday, during which we open our telephone line for you to comment on national issues. Once again, we thank you for watching. I am Shafiu Suleiman.